Hi guys! Today I'd like to show you how I color butterflies with watercolor. On this page we have lots of beautifully illustrated butterflies and I'm going to try different color combinations. I'll also show you a watercolor technique that works even if the paper isn't the best, so don't worry, your page will be safe. I'll start with some purple and turquoise blue. When it comes to coloring books, you really don't need top quality paints. They won't show their full potential on this kind of paper anyway. So grab some purple and turquoise, don't worry about the brand, and let's see how they mix. I'm not using anything to protect the paper because I actually like how watercolor goes straight onto the surface. I love that transparency. And every time I tried using some kind of undercoat, I didn't like how the paint sat on top. It just felt off. And when I'm working on something small like this, I think it's fine as long as you're careful. As for the black lines, I'll try covering some of them up later and some right away, so you can see both ways and decide what you prefer. If you're a beginner, it's a good idea to start with more pigment and less water. I actually added quite a bit of water here with the purple even from the start. You can definitely use less, it's safer and your colors will be more vibrant. Apply the color to the tip of the wing, then rinse your brush, tap off the excess water and gently stretch the color outward into a soft, transparent edge. If you end up with too much water, just grab a paper towel or a cloth and lightly tap to lift the excess. Take your time, this technique doesn't need to be rushed. Now when adding the blue, just place it on the edges so it blends a little with the purple, but not too much. If the color starts to run out of control, just keep your paper towel nearby and use it when needed. Most of the wings should stay a bit transparent in the middle. That lighter area helps with values. It keeps the center of the wing bright and gives a feeling of depth, like the wings aren't completely flat. So let's leave that glow in the middle and see how it turns out. Now I'm adding a slightly darker blue underneath, but honestly with butterflies I feel like you can't really go wrong. I'm not trying to make anything realistic, I just want to play with beautiful colors and enjoy some relaxed coloring. This is actually the main technique we'll be using today. Add the amount of pigment you want, then stretch the edges into transparency or blend them into another color so they gradually mix in certain areas. Once everything is dry, we'll either cover the lines or add another layer depending on whether we want more color, more contrast, or some detail. Watercolor in coloring books definitely takes patience. You can't just keep adding color over color using the wet on wet technique. You need to be a bit more thoughtful and wait for certain areas to dry before you go over them again. But it's also a really nice technique if you want to enjoy watercolor without worrying that the paper will soak through or get damaged on the other side. There are a lot of butterflies on this page, so you can really play with color here. Feel free to copy the colors I'm using. Sometimes it's fun to compare and see how close you got. But if you feel like trying something different, go for it. Just trust your instinct, and maybe another color feels better to you, and that's totally okay. These butterflies are bright and colorful, and no matter how you paint them, I'm sure they'll turn out beautiful. The most important thing is to enjoy the process. This is a very calm, relaxed technique. The images aren't too big, and there's no pressure to get everything perfect. I'm using the Beautiful Planet coloring book, but you can use this technique with any butterfly illustration you have. Butterflies are such a popular choice in coloring books, probably because they're so wild, colorful, and full of possibilities. Once we've finished that first layer of paint on the butterfly, we'll let it dry completely, and in the meantime we can move on to another part of the page. Here I'm going to try covering the lines right away. I'm using an acrylic marker for that. I recently got these to test and review, and honestly they've turned out to be a great way to quickly cover up black lines in coloring books. They're super easy to use, they dry really fast, and the pastel shades are perfect. They don't distract from the watercolor underneath. If you don't have acrylic markers, don't worry. For a long time, I used a mix of white gesso or just white matte acrylic paint and a bit of the watercolor I was using. The important thing is that the acrylic is matte, because if it's shiny or glossy, you won't be able to paint over it later. You can also use gouache or pre-mixed acrylic colors, but I personally like adding a touch of white paint to my colors. It softens them more than regular watercolor pigment, and it helps hide the black lines in a gentle way. Here you can just play around with the markers. It's really easy to fill in these smaller areas. Some lines I'll make darker just to see how they look once I start painting the wings with watercolor. Others I'll cover with a much lighter marker. The lines in this coloring book are quite thin, so they're actually very easy to cover. For the thicker lines, you might need 2 or 3 layers, but that's simple enough to do. Of course, you don't have to cover the lines at all. You can leave them as they are, especially if you plan to decorate your butterflies later with metallic paints or other details like I'll be doing soon. I just want to show you the techniques I normally use when painting with watercolor in the books. From there, you can experiment and decide what feels best for you, whether you want to cover the lines or not, or what kind of look you enjoy most. As for the colors on this page, I want to use a lot of bright and vibrant shades like purple, blue, pink, turquoise, and I definitely want to add some orange and yellow too. But when you're working with such bright colors and the butterflies are arranged so close together, it's good to plan the page a little bit instead of just randomly placing totally different colors next to each other. For example, if you want to use lots of different colors, try letting the colors flow a bit from one butterfly to the next. On this second butterfly, I might add some pink or purple, which connects nicely to the purple from the first one, and then slowly introduce a warmer color, maybe a soft orange or yellow that wasn't in the first butterfly. I think that works better than suddenly jumping into something like red and yellow all at once. Even just mixing a little of the color from the butterfly next to it can help make the whole page look more harmonious. Once I've covered the lines I wanted to neutralize, I go straight in with a watercolor. These markers dry fast, so there's no need to wait. But if you used gesso or acrylic paint instead, just make sure it's completely dry before you start painting over it. Now I'll begin with a touch of magenta purple, just like I did on the first butterfly. Then I'll rinse my brush and softly stretch that color into transparency. Next, I'll add a bit of dark blue in the areas I want to keep the darkest. If you find that there's too much pigment, just rinse your brush again, maybe dry it a little on a cloth, and then gently stretch the color out. You'll have more control that way. In watercolor, it's important to learn when the right moment is to add a second layer, because on real watercolor paper, that timing affects how the painting will look. But in coloring books, it's a bit different. Since the paper usually isn't meant for a lot of water, you risk the color bleeding through to the other side if it's still too wet. Sometimes you can just test it lightly with your finger or try adding pigment again and see how the paper reacts. I've done this often enough to know roughly how a second layer will behave, but I still recommend testing it. If you prefer painting over coloring with pencils, just know that sometimes things will bleed through and that's okay. Be ready to sacrifice a page here and there. Coloring book paper is mostly designed for pencils, so if you want to explore watercolor, you have to let go of perfectionism. You might get your hands messy, you might ruin a page, but that's how you learn. It's the same with life. You can't avoid mistakes, and that's actually the best way to grow. And if you stayed with me this far, it means you are interested in watercolors, so don't stress if something goes wrong. If a bit of paint bleeds through or the page gets a little messy, it just means you're practicing and getting better. As for brushes, I'm using Fuumuui round brushes, sizes 0 to 3 for this part. You don't want anything too big because it gets tricky to control in these small details. Smaller brushes let you be more precise, especially when working around edges or blending gently. You'll see in this tutorial that sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing. Right now I'm just experimenting, figuring out which shapes are worth emphasizing and which ones maybe not so much. At this stage, I'm mostly just darkening the ends of the wings a bit, trying to create a bit of roundness, or highlight the interesting shapes in a soft and pretty way. Then I can add some warmer colors to the bottom of the butterfly, just to see how the colors play together. Maybe a touch of pink or magenta under the wings to help the transitions feel smoother. I'm also thinking about adding a more vibrant orange near the bottom because there's a big butterfly down there that I really want to make stand out. I'd love it to feel special and warm, so this way I can start building a nice color transition and harmony on the whole page. And as soon as I lay down these colors, we'll go back to the first butterfly while this one dries. I always try to plan ahead and visualize the page before I start coloring. That doesn't mean it will always turn out the way I imagined. Actually, I mess things up quite a lot, but having a plan really helps you move through a page with more confidence. And if you're aiming to create something a bit more artistic, you'll probably enjoy the process more if you're not constantly stuck wondering what color to use next. If you're coloring a page like this and you're not sure about the color combinations, you can always look up real butterflies for inspiration. For example, try searching purple and orange butterfly on Google, find one you like and compare it to your page. See how the colors work together. It can help you visualize things more clearly, and I think it can even spark new ideas and make the page more fun and creative in the end. So now that the watercolor is dry, we can cover the black lines on the butterfly, if you want to, of course. I'm going to use acrylic markers in matching colors. You can also do this with gouache or by mixing a little white gesso or matte acrylic paint with the same watercolor you've been using. That way you get a softer, more blended look that neutralizes the lines nicely. These markers dry really quickly, so right after that you can go back in and darken some areas if you want to add more depth. I usually do 2 or 3 layers because I really like the contrast between those rich colors and the transparency. Now it's important to use a smaller brush for these final layers so you don't accidentally smudge anything, especially when filling in tiny details. We're not painting realistic butterflies here, so you can really have fun with the colors. Just stop when it feels like adding more won't improve anything. It's okay to leave parts transparent and let the watercolor breathe. Once when I'm done with the painting, I will add my favorite part, metallic paints. I use them to highlight lines or little details I want to stand out. This is a handmade set of metallic watercolors from Mauve Watercolors, and they shift colors depending on the angle. It's so beautiful and fun to work with. The lighting here today isn't great, so I probably won't be able to capture how the colors really look, but that's okay. I just wanted to give you some ideas for decorating your butterflies. And of course, not everyone has these specific paints, so you can use whatever you have, metallic acrylics, metallic watercolors, or even just a simple silver, copper, or gold accent in a few places can look really lovely. Sometimes I'll fill in the entire wing with metallic paint just because I love that shiny effect. But of course, you don't have to do that. It's totally up to your taste and what kind of metallic paints you have. It shines really beautifully. It really gives the whole piece a lovely finish, and honestly, I just enjoy working with them so much. I'll add metallic colors depending on the butterfly's colors because I can really have fun here. For example, the purple shifts into blue, the pink turns into a beautiful copper, and I also have some regular metallic paints just in case I don't like how the chameleon ones look together. This part is honestly my favorite, just playing with colors and shine. I've shown you the main techniques on these two butterflies, and that's exactly how I'll be playing with all the others on this page. I'll mix in a bit more color later on just to give you some ideas for your own butterflies. No need to go into full detail for every single one. I'll just show you a bit of the process here and there.